Welcome back to Both Sides of the Barricade. This week we have our final guest of the season, a very special guest, a very special artist, Finneas O'Connell. He's a six-time Grammy Award-winning singer, songwriter, and producer. He released 3 singles this year following his 2019 debut EP, Blood Harmony. He produced all of the 2019 Album of the Year, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? If I listed all of his accolades, we would probably take up the whole episode. So, Finneas, is there anything you'd like to say before we start?
Yeah, you're born to do this. That was so smooth.
Thank you.
That was great.
Thank you so much. So I like to start the episodes with like a little bit about how we met, especially with the artist.
Totally.
People always ask me how I know people. So
Yeah.
if you'd like to tell the story, since I do a lot.
Okay. Well, so I'll tell the story that I know, which is probably wrong in some ways, and you can correct, and then then it's right.
I got you.
So we first of all, props to you for really just being like, up on everything, because you were at, I think, Billy's Mercury Lounge show in August of 2017, which is, way before I think anybody really knew about Billy's music. And so that was during the period where we had sort of it was small shows. We had no entourage or anything. So we were like, I think she was just standing out on the sidewalk taking photos with people. Right. So I know you were there because of like, at the time it was like, that was literally the third show we'd ever done. So everything was more important than, anything else in the world to me at the time, because it was like the first, right? So I was like, just so shocked that anyone was coming to see Billy's shows. I was so excited that people were waiting in line to meet her. So it was all very meaningful. And then that led off into, we did another tour, right, that fall.
Yeah.
Where we played Baby's All Right. You were at that show, right?
Wait, no, I was at the Philly show.
You were World Cafe.
Yep.
Where we played in like the lobby of a venue.
It was so small.
That was so small. Yeah. So that was, that first US run we did, we played in a bunch of venues like that, where we were like, this is a venue? Like, it was like really there were people eating. There was like a crush of audience members actually right up where we were performing, and then otherwise it was just like a restaurant. So like when we played, like, I don't know, Hostage or something really quiet, it was like there was people, you just hear like knives and forks on cutlery.
Oh, you're right.
And then, and again, like, we really, we were very aware, not that we're no longer aware, it's just harder to facilitate now. We were very aware that like the only reason we were having the fun experience was because of people showing up to the shows. So we definitely, like, I remember talking to you and Ian after that show specifically for like an hour or something, like a long time. Because we just stayed. Remember, we just stayed at the venue and hung out after that show.
My dad was so mad. He was like, "You better not here." Like, I'm like, "No."
I know. When I was like in my teens, I would go see shows in LA and would hang out with my friends at like there's like a Denny's around the street from the Will Turn in LA, and I would hang out with my friends at the Denny's after seeing like the Arctic Monkeys or something, and my mom would be very frustrated because it would end up being very late. But I was having like it was very, very perks of being a wallflower. It was like having the time of my life. Anyway, so that was November. That was actually October of 2017. October. And then 2018, right? We had a show in the spring, saw you then, and then another long, like, remember, by the time it was fall of 18, like somehow like you and Ian, I was like I know their names, we really know each other. And so I remember I think were you at the Vivo show in New York?
Yes, I was.
So you were at the Vivo show in New York, and then Claudia and I had just started dating, and then you and Ian were backstage in Philly at what venue were we playing that night in Philly? What was the name?
It's my favorite venue in Philly.
I was going to say the only reason I remembered that venue really was I remember like posting our tour flyer, and you commented like, "This is my favorite venue in Philly." And like, I don't know venues in cities that aren't LA. And so I remember being like, "Oh, well, this must be good."
Yeah.
And we did end up having a really fun show. That was a fun night. We had Tierra Whack came to that show.
Really? Oh my God.
She was backstage. So we got to meet Tierra, which was really cool for me because I'm a big Tierra Whack fan.
Oh, she's amazing.
She's really good. So that was end of 18. And then 2019, just more, right? It was just, I
Mhm.
mean, we
Oh,
just
yeah.
toured something.
I
It's
don't think
crazy
I
to,
went I don't think I went, like, 2 or 3 months without seeing you guys
that's
for, like,
crazy.
at least,
That's
like,
so
a year
cool.
and a half period. Because
We,
you guys were just constantly touring, which I loved, but
we're very lucky to have, you know, people in the audience that we recognize. I think it's one of the more fun things. I mean, now we play these venues that are like big enough that sometimes it's hard to see anybody, which is sad. But especially up until really mid late 2019, it was so fun because like we'd see you, we'd see like Joelle, like there's
oh,
just
yeah.
people that it's like super recognizable and just such a treat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and, like,
really fun.
I met a lot of friends, like, through, like,
That's so
videos
cool.
too, yeah, and, like, even over social media, like, kids who would go to, like, LA shows, I would
Right.
know because I would, like, see on their Instagram, like, that they had seen you a bunch of times and, like, they'd follow me.
That's so
Yeah,
cool.
so it was things like that, and, yeah, I remember, like, that day in New York, I don't even think I was supposed to go, like, to the Mercury Lounge show. Like,
The
my
very first one.
yeah, my friend, like, was like, "Oh, I can't go, like, I have to," because she lived in Boston, and was like, "Take these tickets." I'm like, "Sure," like, because I was with a friend, and I'm like, because I was a fan, but I was just like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I wasn't planning on going, I just kind of came into
sure.
the city," and I'm so glad that I went, obviously, it was, like,
Aw.
such a fun show, and
So you also, sorry to cut you off, but
no problem.
you I could tell this is funny to say. Just by virtue of the fact that you were at our like earliest show we ever did in New York, it was our first show in New York ever. I was like, I bet she and her friends like know what's up. And so I followed you, and then you would post like I found out about Kaylee Morg because of you, because I saw you going to her show, and then
Yeah.
like Medusa became like one of my favorite songs, but only because I had seen that you had gone to one of her shows. Like you're aware of artists like way before I am, which is
Yeah,
so cool.
that's so crazy, like, to think that, like, I put, like, people onto
Yeah.
artists, and, like, I mean, that's what I'm kinda doing here, but, like,
Right.
it's so cool to me when people are like, "Oh my god, I started listening to this artist because of you," and I'm like, "That's crazy," like, because I just assume no one listens to the music that I post on my stories, like, so if they do, I'm
We
like,
I think to me one of my proudest moments ever is anytime I'm the person playing someone a song that they then end up loving for months and
mhm,
months, or in perpetuity for the first time. And Claudia and I both are always trying to do it to Billy. Like yesterday she played some song for me that I really liked, and then I sort of like put it on later and was like, I love that song. And she was like, I'm gonna show it to Billy. And I was like,
you're like,
that's fine. She's like, you better not show it to her first, which I get, because you feel really good about yourself when you tip someone off. And in
yeah,
fact, that was actually a really big part of my adolescence with Billy, was playing her a band that she ended up loving, her playing me an artist that I ended up loving. It was all kind of that sort of communal thing, and that's what friendships are too. It's a great common ground.
yeah, I love it, but then, yeah, I remember, like, that was my freshman the first time I saw you guys was, like, I was going into my freshman year of college, now I'm a senior, which is
Crazy.
crazy. But, like, as a freshman, like, I remember trying to, like, put everyone onto Billy. I was
That's so cool.
I was like, "You don't get it. Like, you have to listen to this music." And it was, like, the same thing with, like, Brockhampton that year. Like, I was just trying to, like, force these, like, smaller artists, like, into everyone's faces, and then, like, finally it caught on, and I was like, "Okay, so now I gotta find something else." But, like,
That's
it
so funny.
it's, like, the best thing ever because I remember then, like, the next year, she was getting huge, and, like,
Right.
you guys were everywhere. Like, people in my professors would talk about you guys in lectures, and I was
Wow.
like, it was, like, a shock for me because like, I know I talk about them a lot, but, like, to hear it, like, on the other side, like, my professors being like, "Yes, like, this was an amazing, like, rising star." I'm like, "Oh my god, like, this is so weird," but yeah, so
You probably also get no props as soon as the artist is huge, right? Like
oh,
you're like,
I get props. People are
oh, okay,
like
good.
yeah, people well, at least in my school, they were like
That's great. I'm
'cause
glad to hear that.
well, because they see, like, you follow me, they like, obviously, you're on here,
Right.
they're like, "How do you
Sure.
know her how do you know this?"
Right.
And I'm like, "Oh, I was there on day 1."
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you're there when it really, like, again, it's like it's not that we value. I feel like we value every person who comes to a show the same amount, which is incredibly highly. But that being said, it's like your capacity to recognize people is like when you're remembering your first couple shows ever, and there's only 100 or 200 people at them, and then you meet five, you really remember those people. So I think that would be my kind of, I don't know, it's not even advice, but it's like whenever I've found a band phenomenally early, it's like I have an awareness that I'm like, my presence at that show, even if they don't ever meet me, is like making more of an impact than like my presence will be if I go to like a huge arena later, because they feel so grateful to be playing that tiny little venue.
Mhm.
So I think that's very true. And yeah, you were doing it for like a bunch of people. I have a question for you.
Mhm.
How were you? You don't have to answer this if it's uncomfortable. How were you affording tickets to everything?
Oh, well, I mean, at the time, I was going to all these small shows, like, at Baby
Right.
Shower, right, tickets would be, like, 10, 15 bucks,
$12. Yeah.
and it was more expensive for me to get to New York than
I
anything
was gonna
else.
say, yeah.
Yeah, but, I was working I've been working since I was, like, 15 years old,
Got
and
it.
so I really like being able to make my own money and just having
That's
that
awesome.
money, because it's not like I really well, I can't do much now, but, like, all I did in high school and college was go to shows, so
Hmm.
all of my spending money went towards that, um,
Got it.
so, I mean, bigger shows that I went to, that was, like, an investment, like, I remember I saw The Weeknd and, like, a ticket for, like, a seat not even close to, like, the floor was, like, $150, and
Crazy.
I was like, "I mean, I guess," like, just because I wanted to see him. But, yeah, so big tickets like that were, like, crazy for me to, like, get, but, when it came to, like, all these I think that was another reason I liked finding smaller artists because then I was like, "Oh, the
Yeah.
tickets are only gonna be, like, $15. This is great."
Right. Yeah. Smart.
Yeah, and especially, like, those smaller shows, it's cool because like, I feel like I'm almost getting more out of it because I love that intimate experience, and I like
Yeah.
being able to, like, talk to the person after. So,
Yeah.
smaller shows, like, it was almost worth it more to, like, go to those than
I definitely, when I go to smaller shows, I feel like it's so different, and in a way that I think I will always prefer. And the funny thing about like super pricey arena tickets to me is like, and I don't even know that I was really aware of this until like being like on tour with Billy and playing those shows. The only reason they're so expensive is that the show is so expensive,
oh, yeah. No,
which is
I know that
crazy.
now, but when I was younger
Yeah.
yeah, now doing, like, classes that revolve around, like, tour budgeting and things like that, I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay, I get it now." It's not like it's still not fun, but, like, as a
Isn't
fan,
that
like, I
crazy though? Yeah, it's just so expensive
yeah.
too. I think it's also, to be totally honest, it's like the the main thing is that the standards have just gotten like preposterously high,
Mhm.
and like artists are all expected to be putting on this like multimedia fireworks display kind of show
Yeah.
at that level, like at an arena level. And again, it makes it fun to go to as an audience member, and also like it makes it fun to even have a crappy seat at an arena because it's a big show.
Yeah.
But it does kind of like it drives the ticket prices into this like ridiculous territory, because it's, if you don't sell it that way, you can't play the show because it's too expensive, and you
Mhm.
like lose money on the whole tour. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting. I didn't even really know that until we toured.
Yeah, and I wouldn't know it, like, as a fan, like, I was talking to Olivia about it, like, these things were, like, I would have no idea if I wasn't in school
Right.
for it, like, so now I kind of
Right.
have more knowledge of it, but at the time, I was just like, "Oh my god, like, it's so
So
expensive,
expensive.
like, he'll charge this much." Like, yeah,
I
that's
know.
all you think of, like, as a fan, but that's how it goes. So, like, going back to what you were talking about with,
Yeah.
like, your adolescence and, like, showing Billy
Yeah.
the artists and things like that, like, what was your relationship like with music growing up? Like, as
It
a
was.
how your parents showed you music,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
So LA is like a commute city. There's a lot of driving in Los Angeles. Even to your friend's house, like you meet somebody at some mutual thing, at a soccer practice or whatever, and you go like, I want to be friends with that person, and they do not live in your neighborhood. Which is like, when I talked to like Claudia, who grew up in a suburb in Chicago, like um, the people that she was friends with lived a bike ride away,
Yeah.
and probably with exception, but that's when that's what I've gleaned. And yeah, in LA, it was like, things, and even hanging out with a friend was a 30-minute drive a lot of the time. And that just meant a lot of time listening to music. And we were never like a radio family. I think it was because my parents like hated ads. Like the only time I remember listening to the radio was when there was like, when we were stuck in traffic on the freeway, my parents would be like, there has to be an accident, and they would turn on the radio to see
Oh,
like what the accident was, so the traffic report. But in terms of music, it was like they never had the radio on, and my dad made mix CDs like our whole childhood. I think they were on LimeWire. That's my memory of it. So
yeah.
questionable legality, but he had this whole kind of Robin Hood mentality about it, which was like, listen, he was like, I bought all of these albums on vinyl, and then I bought them on CD, and now fuck it, I just have LimeWire.
Yeah.
And or I guess it was vinyl cassette, and then he was like, fuck it, I bought them twice.
Mhm.
And I can shoot holes through that, because like then time goes by and you're just downloading new music on LimeWire,
Mhm.
and it's not whatever. In many ways, the online music world, what the legal online music world just was too slow to catch up.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, Spotify and LimeWire are the same thing. It's just that you can pay for Spotify, and LimeWire was illegal. Like, but they
Yeah.
actually are just the same exact platform. So we would have these mixed CDs, and they would range from like stuff my dad loved in his earlier life, in his 30s and his 20s, stuff he had just found, and then a lot of just sort of like classics like the Beatles and Joni Mitchell and Paul Simon and Garfunkel, Pink Floyd. So that was sort of always being like played for us, and that was nice because you'd get in the car and you'd have your favorite. I was a huge Avril Lavigne stan in
Same.
my childhood.
Same.
I would there's her song "Complicated." I thought the name of it was "Life's Like This" because that's what her first line, I guess, right?
Mhm.
Anyway, so I was always like, play life's like this, and I'd be sitting in like the back row of our Toyota Sienna, like looking out the window meaningfully, like
Yeah, just like
life is so difficult, and I was like 6, I was so young. And then yeah, I think somewhere around like 8, maybe like 8 or 9, I got like some like off-brand MP3 player type thing. That like my memory of it, and I could be wrong, is that it had like a little display where you could see like the name of the song,
Mhm.
and then it had like play, pause, and then like skip and back. And so
Yeah.
like you couldn't even browse your catalog, you could just like skip
Yeah,
through
I had the
like a
same thing.
CD.
I had the same thing.
But I rinsed that thing. I loved it, and I had like I would load lots of different things onto it. Um, and then I remember the first album I ever bought was "Move Along" by the All American Rejects,
Another classic.
which I forget how old I was when I bought that, but to be super long winded about it, what had happened was my buddy had a PlayStation, like a PSP, a
Mhm.
PlayStation Portable,
Oh my
and
god, yeah.
he was playing some tune on it that was awesome. And I didn't ask him about it. And then for the next 2 weeks, I was like, God, whatever my buddy was playing on his PSP was so rad. And then I was at a friend's house, and a Kids Bop commercial came on. And in the Kids Bop commercial, they sang like the Kids Bop cover of "Move Along." And I was like, that's the song. And then I like went and downloaded the original, which is what I'd heard. But yeah, I mean, that was an album that I adored. And then, just kind of the tipping point. I think it was like, again, like I saved up like allowance money or something at like 9.
Yeah.
I bought that album, and I bought Pirates of the Caribbean, the movie, to play on my, at the time, I think like iPod Touch or something. Um, yeah. But again, it was like, it was so important. I was always listening to music. I was like a real headphone wearing kid. I just always was listening to music everywhere. And it just never ever went away. Just stayed and got more and more and more prominent.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like, out of all the people I've, like, asked that question to, like, your story is, like, so much a parallel to mine because, like, I
Oh,
was
sweet.
yeah, I was the same way, like, my dad, like, he would make mix CDs for my mom because my mom, like, she was, like,
That's
a
cute.
yeah, she wasn't, like, a huge, like, music person, so she didn't, like, really she loved, like, 80s pop, she loved Madonna, like, and
Yeah.
that kinda thing when she was younger, stuff that you could dance to at parties, that's what she liked, and so, like,
Cute.
She wasn't, like, actively looking for music, but my dad was a huge music person, like, I mean, I talk about him in, like, every episode, but, like, Bruce Springsteen and, like, The Cure, like, when he was, like, in the '90s, like, he was listening to, like, all those types of bands.
Wow.
So, yeah, he would make those mix CDs for my mom, so that was a lot of what I heard when I was a kid. But then my dad, he would also, like, he would listen to, like, Katy Perry and Lady Gaga and Avril
Right.
Lavigne.
Contemporary stuff.
Yes, and, like, all these, like, pretty much, like, pop girls, like, alt pop girls, which is what I listen to now, and so he introduced me to all of that, but I remember listening to All American Rejects and, like, Dashboard Confessional and, like, all yeah, all these bands that he would, like, put onto my little, like, it didn't have a screen, it was literally just, like,
Yeah.
an MP3 player, and he would just put whatever on it, and that's what I would listen to. Like, I didn't really have, like, a taste in music
Sure. But that's like
until
I'm assuming you were like so young because that's the
oh,
whole
yeah.
deal.
Yeah,
Is like
no, I
when you're
was
that young, like you haven't developed
yeah.
like you haven't developed like your own like musical like proclivities. It's more like you know what you like and what you don't, and you skip what you don't, and you know
Yeah.
what you do.
My first, like, knowledge of actively, like, looking for music, was, like, music videos. Like,
Yeah,
I would watch music videos. So, like, Toxic by Britney, my parents,
crazy.
I don't think, showed me that because like, the music video is, like, super explicit, or, like, at least when
Yeah.
I was 8, it was. And then, like, Maroon 5, I remember they had, like, nudity in, like, in a music video, and I
I
was just like,
so
"What is this?"
that's so funny that you're talking about this because I had the exact same sort of relationship with it. I watched every music video for every song I loved, and when they were like adult content, I was flipped out because
Yeah,
I was like seven, six,
yeah,
seven, and I would either yeah, I mean, I would either be like, oh my god, that girl's very nearly naked, or I would be like, oh my god, my parents who again like weren't even like they weren't even very strict, but I was like, oh, they if they were here, they would turn this off because they would know that I'm too young to watch this. So it
yeah,
was, yeah, my relationship with music videos, I remember them in the exact same way you do, which
yeah.
is like, wow, that was explicit.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that was, like, that was my biggest, like, thing. That was, like, kind of, like, the first, like, thing I've had with, like, these pop girls, like, just very, like, scantily clad,
Yeah,
as my
right.
dad would say, and I just remember, like, my brother watching them with me too, because we had, like, the one computer in the house,
Yep,
and so I'd
of
be like, "I'm
course.
watching music videos, so you're gonna have to sit here and watch with me." But yeah, those are, like, the 2 that I remember specifically. It was, like, Maroon 5 and Britney Spears, and then when I got older, I started loving, like, the special effects in videos, like Katy Perry's
Yeah.
"Empty" was, like, one of my favorite videos ever just because I loved the special effects makeup that they made her, like, look like an alien with. Um,
Hmm.
so it was that kind of thing. I just loved music videos. That was a huge thing for me. I think that's what exposed me to a lot of, like, the music that then I then started listening to because I
One
was
of
a
the
huge pop
one
fan.
of the first videos I ever watched, I think, like, or maybe not that I ever watched, but one of the videos that I have like the most memory of is like Cry Me a River, the Justin Timberlake video where he's
Mhm.
like floating around like he's like standing on his toes on railings and stuff. And again, it was like the sort of the impossibility of the shots where I was like,
Yeah,
oh, this is so cool.
yeah. Well, and now you're making them. That's crazy. Like, you get to see that, like, back behind the scenes. Um, okay. So wait, what was your first concert then?
My first concert that was like a, you know, a hot like a ticket I really wanted to go see.
Yeah.
Because before that was like our friend is playing an open mic night, and I was like, oh, fine. And those were like so I hated those. Um, the first concert that I wanted to go see and went to see was Green Day when I was 11 at the Forum, and yeah, I mean, you know, like super cliche. Like went and saw the concert and was like changed my life. Was like that. I want to do this forever. I
Mhm,
want to be. I want to do that. Um, that was like the 21st century breakdown era, which was a very important album to me
mhm.
with like the song 21 Guns on it. And I mean, there's a lot of songs like Last Night on Earth is really important to me. Like there's a lot of songs on that album that I love.
Yeah. That was another band that my dad would, like, play for me, and he didn't censor music for me, like,
Right.
expletives were not censored, but, like, that's why, like,
Same.
the, like,
Yeah.
sexual stuff, I was like, "Whoa," like, I don't know if
Right.
that's
Exactly.
allowed because it wasn't, like
Yeah, totally.
yeah, but, like, he never censored music for me, like, I
Right.
remember, like, singing along to American Idiot, like, as, like, an 8-year-old.
Yeah. Well, and Green Day uses, it's a weird thing to say about a band, but they use expletives in like a much more inventive way than most artists do. Like my joke always is that most artists use, like, they say fuck that to like fill a syllable. Like they
Mhm.
say it in a line to just like add a syllable.
Yeah.
And like Green Day will like construct a whole line around a swear word that like it's just very creative. And
Yeah.
so I think that also like got kind of an art pass in my mind where I was like, but come on, that's a great line, as
Yeah.
opposed to like just gratuitous
Yeah.
um profanity or something. But yeah, so that was the first concert. And again, I mean, I was 11, so that was like with my friend Ruby and our moms. And then, went and saw some more, but that was a good bill. That was Franz Ferdinand opening for them, which is
Mhm.
also a band I loved. And then I don't think I really started going to concerts until I was like 14. And then even then it was like, I mean, you know exactly what it's like to be under 21 trying to go to concerts. Like you can't get into anything. It's
I know.
crazy.
Yeah. Like,
So,
that's why smaller shows, like, really didn't happen until I was in, like, high school. Because at least then you're 16,
yeah.
and, like, most of them were 16 plus, but I remember not being able to go to one show. I wanted to see Muna, and they were playing
Mm.
at a place called, like, Boot and Saddle, which I don't even think is around anymore, which is sad, but, they didn't let me go because I wasn't 21. I was like, "Not even if I bring my dad?" And they were like, "No."
I really was angry about it because but the time between you're 18 and 21 is like a really long time of in
Yeah,
every other direction being like an adult, like a legal adult, where you can like drive around in your car and not that I ever did, but like go buy a cigarette and stuff. And I was like, really? Like I can't go to a venue and have an extra on my hand and not have a drink? Like this is crazy. So I was very frustrated. And anytime we ever got proposed like a gig in an over 21 place, like we tried as hard as we could to like not do
yeah.
it.
Oh, because I
Yeah.
remember, like, fans being like, "Why is this venue 21 plus?" I'm like, "Guys, like, they can't help it."
Yeah.
I was like,
In Australia, for some reason in Australia, and I don't know if it's 18 or 21. I think it's 21, but maybe it's only 18. Maybe they're just like Europe, or it's only 18. In Australia, it's like really like every venue that's not huge is like 18 plus, which was so annoying, especially because, like Billy was like, whatever, 15,
yeah,
16 at the time. So it was like, it was a very annoying process for us where we'd be like, we only want to play to like the people that want to come to this show. Like we don't, and also like at that point, like the people that were older coming to our shows because we were so young were like hype beast, like,
yeah.
yeah, like let's go see what's popping. And it was like, no, 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 we just want like our fans there.
Yeah, and I'm sure Billy wanted, like, people her age, like,
Yeah,
listening, like,
absolutely.
because that's what it was, like, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm older than her, and, like,
exactly.
being at her shows, like, and it being, like, a 16 plus show. I mean, I was 18, I think, the first time I saw you
Sure.
guys, but I remember kids being, like, 13 or 14, and they had to, like, call their parents and, like, say, like, "I'm allowed to be here, like, my mom said it was okay." Like, because the
Dude,
security was like, "You have to call."
yeah. I remember that too. I remember at Mercury Lounge through like Twitter or something, like Michael Atkiss, or I
Mhm.
forget his,
Oh, yes,
like
yeah,
he was the same deal. He was like, I drove all the way to the show and I can't get in because like blah blah blah. And I remember like having our manager walk out and like have his mom on the phone or something and like get the okay for him to
yeah,
come into the venue. Isn't that crazy?
yeah, it's so weird. I mean, because like, I didn't really experience that because I wasn't going to shows. My dad wouldn't let me go alone until I was,
Right.
like, 18. So, like,
Right.
he saw Lana with me for the first time
Mm.
and, like, the 1975, which
Hmm.
I take full credit for putting him onto the 1975 because now
That's cool.
he's, like, a bigger stan than me now with them, and it was because
My dad does that all the time where
yeah.
I play him a song and he then is like, yeah, have you heard their new B-side collection? And I'm like, no, dude, like I have not.
Uh, but I love that, like no, I feel like our dads are very similar in that way, but, like, I remember I begged him, I was like, "Please take me to see them at Madison Square Garden," because it was, like, 2017, it was, like, that I Like It When You Sleep tour, I had to see them, and
Yeah.
he was like, "Fine, like, I'll take you," and, like, the train comes in, and you're under Madison Square Garden, so it wasn't like we went
Right.
anywhere, and he, like at the end of the show, like, I was, like, running around with my friends in the pit, but then he came up and he was like, "They were amazing." He's like, "We have to see them again." And we had
Oh,
tickets for, like, 5 shows for this tour that got
that
canceled.
tour was really good.
Mhm.
Yeah. That that stage setup with all the pillars was really cool.
Yeah. Their shows are so fun. I
Yeah,
just
we went and saw them at this LA venue, the Shrine, which
Mhm.
was an awesome show.
Yeah. I know a lot of, like it's so funny because like, I know a lot of, like, LA venues just because I always, like, see the tours or, like,
Sure.
special events that,
Yeah.
like, artists do in LA, and I'm like, "God, I wish I could be there," but, like, I know all the venues because of that. Uh, but okay, yeah, so I have some fan questions. We'll skip over quarantine. We don't need to rehash quarantine. I do it every episode, and I'm like, it sucks, we know, like
I have this theory too that like, how do I put this? Like quarantine ultimately is going to be so short
Mhm,
that like however long this interview lives for you is like there will come a time like not that far from now where it's like, oh wow, like it kind of like will it where this will be dated because of it.
that's
So
true, that is true.
yeah. I mean today Moderna asked for FDA authorization too, so we got like two vaccines um being authorized.
Yeah,
Anyway,
today in the news.
yeah,
But
exactly.
I guess I will at least talk about, like, the fact that you had to cancel your tour
Oh yeah,
or
it sucked.
postpone it indefinitely. I'm sure that that was like, I remember the only reason I remember it so well is because you like, the last show you played was on my birthday, and
Oh
it was in, like, North Carolina, and then the next day was supposed to be the show that I was going to in
yeah,
Philly.
we had like you and your whole family comped for that
Yes.
show.
I was like, my mom, like, she got, like, a limo for, like,
Oh,
so
it's
and
so sad.
she was like, "It's your 21st, like, let's do
Oh
that." I'm like, "Okay."
yeah.
Like, and then it got canceled. I was so sad, but
um
it is
I
what it
know.
is.
Yeah, I mean obviously it's been such a bummer in every direction. I think, yeah, I mean, and we haven't announced as of this moment. This is November 30th. I'm saying this because I don't know what'll happen in the future, but we haven't announced rescheduled or new dates yet. And
Yeah.
the only reason we haven't is because everyone else has done that and then had to cancel them again, and
Yeah.
that just seems like I understand why they did it initially when they really thought it wouldn't be that long, but it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I just would hate to schedule anything that gets like a fan excited that then they can't go to again.
Yeah.
So we're I think we're gonna just wait until we're like we're 100% positive we can play this show, and
Yeah.
then we'll put them on sale. But yeah, that was a huge drag. I mean, that was the biggest tour venue wise we'd like ever done. We were super excited about it. And instead, um, we've just been making her second album, which is really good. We're really excited about it. So we're lucky in that sense. But it is a little funny to think that like by the time we tour again, like we may have another album done. Like that's
Yeah.
just kind of a crazy, because at the time we were so like album one mode,
Yeah.
and now it'll just be like it's very bizarre.
Well, and before, like I said, you guys were touring constantly. Like, it would be, like,
Yes.
2 or 3 tours for, like,
Yeah.
the same, like, period of time,
Yeah.
and so I was just used to that, and now
Right.
it's like, "Oh, all the albums that came out this year, I'm not gonna get to hear live for,
I
like"
know, really, it's
so
true. I feel really bad for the worst I feel for is like the artists that put out an album like right at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
Like the Strokes have that great new album that came out right at the beginning of this. I mean, Dua's album came out like in April or something.
So
Um
sad about that.
and they're so good,
Mhm.
and it's like, yeah, it's really sad because even if they don't put out another album before the quarantine's over, it's like it'll still be old to them,
Yeah.
which is
Well,
the sad part.
yeah, and that's the thing, it's like a lot of my friends were saying, because like, we're also like, "Well, what's next? What's next? What's next?" Like,
Yeah.
we've seen this artist, like, moving on.
Right.
Things live for, like, a week in our, like,
Yeah.
playlists, like, so it's, like, hard to be like, "Oh, we're still gonna be excited about this album when
I
it
know.
comes back around." I mean, like, for a lot of artists, like Rina Sawayama, I am so excited to see her live one day. I
Hmm.
love her album. Same thing with Dua, like, Future Nostalgia was, like, such a
Great
good
album.
album, and so I think it'll still be exciting. I saw her, like, on
Yeah.
the show too, but, um
I missed that because it was like the day after Thanksgiving. Was it awesome?
it was really cool, like, the
That's
production
cool.
value was, like, crazy, and she looked amazing. She never
That's
looked
cool.
bad, like, so just watching her for, like, an hour was, like,
That's awesome.
great. So yeah, that's at least held me over. I watched Coin's live stream show too, I love Coin. and
They're great.
they sounded really great on the live stream. And they're like, it's not that they aren't fun, it's just obviously not the same. Like for me, someone who went to shows like every week, I'm like, it's just not the same. But I
It's
do it
not
to
the
support
same.
the
It's
artist.
not the same at all. And it's also like, we just did one in October, and like the fun part about it to me was like the rehearsal process felt like we were on tour again. Like we had
Mhm.
our whole crew, albeit we were like all in masks and like, shoulder bumping each other or elbow bumping each other. But the fun part was like getting to pretend we had a job again. And
Yeah.
even during the show, I was like, like, who's watching this? But like mainly, to be honest with you, we did that whole thing to like pay our crew, because otherwise we would have had
Yeah.
no thing to employ our crew for like a year.
Yeah, well, that's what my dad was saying too, because he's like he loves, like, Brian Fallon. I don't know if you listen to him, but he's, like, the lead singer of the Gaslight Anthem, and
Oh, got it.
yeah, and I mean, like, I think you'd love his stuff, but he's like my dad was like, "I would just give him money if I could." Like, he was like, "I just wanna support him." Like, he'll buy
That's
all his
sweet.
merch, all his posters, like, watches his, like, little, like, Instagram lives or whatever, and he's like,
Uh-huh.
"I would just send him money if I could." Like, so whenever I complain, like, "Oh, it's not the same," he's like, "Well, you're just supporting, like, the artists and, their crew and everything." So in that sense, it's nice still. And I watched your live, so
Oh,
someone was watching.
I mean, not to say we weren't proud of it, and
Oh,
we
yeah.
were, and the crew did such a good job with that sort of like integrated AR, VR, whatever the fuck it's
Mhm.
called.
It was really cool.
Um, yeah, it
Visual.
was really fun, but I'm in the same boat. It's like I just want to go to a show.
Yeah. I miss them so much. Ugh. But anyways, okay, I have some fan questions for you.
Let's do it.
There's also some questions from, like, my peers at school, so
Cool.
shout out to the Rowan Music Industry Program. And,
Nice.
yeah, so the first one is, what is something that not many people know about you, like a hidden talent or special interest?
Um, I think this is like a question you get asked a fair amount, and so
Mhm.
you run out of hidden talents. Um, trying to think of something that's like actually of any interest.
It's a very college icebreaker question. I
Yeah.
apologize. Like, I hate those.
Oh, okay. I'm completely cutting off the hidden talent portion of this, but I'm using it because I'm so excited for her. Phoebe Bridgers, the wonderful artist who's nominated for a handful of Grammys this year, like four, I think.
Queen.
Phoebe Bridgers beat me in a battle of the bands when I was like 15 or 14. And she was already amazing then. And she sang Georgia and a song called Waiting Room, and it was like unbelievable. And my band came in second place, and her band, she
Wow.
was just alone on stage and she won. And I remember just being like, oh, this artist is amazing. And then we, would see each other once or twice a year, our whole teens. And then she had that kind of like moment with like Julian Baker.
Mhm.
And so I was like, oh, it's really starting to take off. But that was when she was just sort of like opening for everybody.
Yeah,
And then I adored her first album, and then love her second album, obviously. But that's my thing people don't know, is that I
that's
was
amazing.
beaten in a battle of the bands by Phoebe Bridgers when I was like literally 15. And again, deservedly so. It was really good.
Her voice, I just,
It's
like
beautiful, yeah.
I think I tweeted, I was like, "I won't be satisfied until Phoebe Bridgers covers every song ever made." Like, I won't be
Yeah.
satisfied. Like
I love that Iris cover her and Maggie did.
Mhm.
It's so good.
Amazing. I also love her Friday I'm in Love cover that she did. I think it was for Spotify. But I love The Cure and I love Phoebe, so her covering The Cure was amazing. Um, okay, how do you deal with creative blocks? Any advice for other aspiring artists or producers? I'm sure that's a question you get a lot too.
I sort of like change my focus. So like if I have one thing that I'm stuck on and I can't think of the next line or the next chord or the production or anything, I'll just like shift and go like, all right, let me go to something else that's in a totally different stage. Either it's further along or it's less far along, and then you kind of like you get the gear ears working again. And then sometimes you can just switch back over and actually like you'll have solved it. But it's a little bit like, I mean, it's a little bit like a real life version of like actually doing a puzzle. Like you're like, I cannot find this piece no matter how hard I look for this one piece. And then you find another piece and then you find the first. Like it's,
Mhm.
they just kind of like have to like stay loose a little bit.
Yeah.
But it happens, I think it happens to everybody. And the more years I've done this, the more I'm like good at um just knowing when to like like quit for the moment. Like I think there was a period of time where I would just like base my whole self-worth on like the idea that I'm having right now. And the more time goes by, the more I'm like, like it's not like do or die if I come up with this moment right now.
Yeah. No, I think that's very true. And I think not having tunnel vision helps, like you were saying,
Yeah.
like just having other projects that you can work on and like step away from the same time.
Yeah, I think the one of the more fun things about like my professional life is that I have even if you subdue it down to like only Billy's music or something, like there's always like some different thing to look at where like, for example, like working on like if I got stuck on the song we're working on today or whatever, there's still like a mix to approve and give notes on for another song.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just something to like distract yourself and then come at it from like a new perspective. But in the broad scheme, it's like a lot of like, ooh, I don't have any good ideas for my own music. Let me shift over to like something else I've done this year, like um the Demi Lovato production or the Justin thing. It's like something to work on that's other than me.
Yeah. Very true. Oh, I like this question. What's the craziest or funniest thing that has happened to you on tour? I always like hearing these stories. If you have one.
Well, it's like it's not that I don't have one. It's like I have to actually like really like remember stuff.
Oh yeah, it's been a
Um,
while.
yeah, let's see. I mean, there was this one time we went on tour, and then Tom Hanks got coronavirus, and then everybody had to come home. Um, let's see. Well, okay, this is just the thing that I'm thinking of and remembering right now. But we played Lollapalooza 2018,
I
fun
was
show.
there. I was there.
Yeah, and then Billy immediately broke her ankle or sprained her ankle
Yeah.
backstage after the show. And the way that Lollapalooza works is like it's just in the middle of like that. What is the name of that park? It's called
Grant
like
Park, right? Yeah.
Grant. Yeah, and it's just in the center of downtown Chicago.
Mhm.
And so getting back from that to your hotel is like insane because it's like hundreds of thousands of pedestrians walking around or
Yeah.
like people from the festival. And so we were like in gridlock traffic with Billy with a broken ankle. And the driver's like, I can't get down like the 2 blocks until your hotel room or till your hotel building. And so Brian, our tour manager, like like a Sherpa, put Billy on his back and just like
Wow.
sprinted several blocks down. Like and of course, because kids are like this, everyone was like, it's Billy, and then like chased after her
Oh my
being
god.
carried on our tour manager's back. um yeah, that was I will not soon forget that. That was
Wow.
entertaining.
That's real dedication though, putting
I
her on
know.
his back.
Yeah, there's there's a lot of like any footage I have from like backstage at shows, like because Billy had like shin splints and she'd break an ankle or whatever. She's always being carried on like my dad's back or
Yeah.
Brian's back or somebody's back. It's so funny.
I know, I feel so bad every time I see that, like, tape on her legs. I'm like, "Oh my god, I just know she's hurting."
She's very, it's kind of a combo of her being accident prone and also like just like going so hard on stage, like she's
Yeah,
just like jumping for 2 hours.
that too. This is probably a hard one, especially with this year
Cool.
being so, like, unexpected. But where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
I like thinking about that. Well, I'll start with like where I'd like to be. I mean, to me, there's within the world of like music, there are so many projects like I really want to be involved in. I really want to score movies, and I really want to do some form of like musical theater project, like write a musical theater, like a show or
Yeah.
something. Um, so those are things I haven't done that I'd like to do. Um, you know, I'm so lucky to get to work with artists I love as a producer. So hopefully I'm still doing that. I think 10 years down the line, like I'd be 33, so I'd love to have like a child. That'd be cool. I would kind of, Claudia can attest to this. I would kind of like to have a child now, and Claudia's like, absolutely not, and probably for the better. But were it only my decision, I would be like, wow, let's have a kid. Um,
And with your job, like, you'd be traveling a ton, I feel
I
like.
think, yeah, you're totally right. I think it's partially just like the COVID fever where
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, I'm home all the time. Um, and then, I mean, the other things, and, we just had an election, but, I think like COVID specifically, and maybe this whole summer of protests and everything, is like sort of proof that we live in a very like fragile world and a fragile time. And so I think this year, more so than any other year in my life, I've like not taken anything for granted. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm just hopeful that we are further down the right path 10 years from now. I mean, obviously, like these past 4 years, we've sort of like gone in like the exact opposite direction that we should be. So
Yeah.
my hope is that however slow, we're continuing to head in the right direction.
I agree. I don't even know what I would say at this point. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
my plans
Right.
change every day. But
Yeah.
okay, the last fan question is from Ian.
Yeah. I, I love Ian. I miss Ian.
He was like, you have to like put this question. He was just like, how much love do you have for Jordan and I, and what was it like meeting us? But you kind of already touched on that, so
I did. I think when you and I, we had someone like summon you backstage
yes.
fall of 2018,
Hmm.
and Claudia was with me for the first time. We'd like really just gotten together, and I was like, oh, Jordan and Ian are coming. I was like, cool. And she was like, who are Jordan and Ian? I was like, oh, they've been to a bunch of our shows. I was like, they have like real perks of being a wallflower vibes. Like they're like characters out of like a book that you would like, you're like, I wish those characters were real.
We are kind of
That's
like
what
Sam
you
and
and
Patrick. At the time, we were very Sam and Patrick.
yeah.
But
But no, I adore you both. I think, it's again like just like you were saying that you've met um friends through like being in audiences for whatever different live shows, 1975 or anybody, it's a joy to get to meet people at your shows.
yeah.
And there it's no less cool to meet any one person than another. So it's very it's a great side effect to get to meet people like you and Ian at shows.
And it was so nice meeting Claudia too. I felt like we had a great time like talking to her that night. And
Yeah, well, you guys were so nice that night.
yeah,
It was really cool.
you'll have to say hi to her for us.
Will do.
Okay, and then I have a couple questions.
Get them.
So do you think that there's something, well, you kind of touched on this, but do you think there's something to be said for being a smaller artist and being able to form personal relationships with fans and truly interact? And do you ever miss that part of like your career? I mean, to some extent, I'm sure
Right.
you don't miss like not being a Grammy winner, but
That's funny. Well, yes, I think everything sort of changes. I walk the really lucky line of like still being a pretty small artist myself, and so I kind of can get that fix when I want to. Like when Billy and I come off a tour, like even because we can't tour this year, but like last year we we did this like tour across like Texas and like Oklahoma in the fall, like the first week of October,
mhm,
and we were playing like arenas, and then she was like headlining Austin City Limits or playing high up on the bill or whatever.
yeah.
And so we were playing these huge venues, and I came home for like 5 days, 6 days, and then did a solo run in like the rooms that Billy and I had played a couple years earlier.
Mhm.
Played like Lincoln Hall or something like it in Chicago. Actually, I think it was called like Talia Hall, and then played uh, uh, what is that fucking venue in Boston called? Anyway, played like a bunch of rooms that Billy and I'd played literally like 2 years earlier or a year and a half earlier. It was
Mhm.
so fun to get to
Yeah,
like go right back to that,
that's true.
vibe.
Yes, you get like the best of both worlds in
Yeah,
that.
exactly. And I've gotten to like, I think you were there. Like I've gotten to play like a bunch of the venues that Billy played when she was just starting out, like played like Baby's All Right and
Yep.
um, you know, the Troubadour and stuff like that. So it is really fun to get to do that. And then with Billy, you'd have to ask her in terms of like what she misses about it. But I think the thing that happened to Billy, which sort of I haven't had happen, which I'm kind of grateful for, is like we were always playing catch up on the venue size.
Yeah.
And so even though they were always really fun shows, there was always like chaos
Yeah.
because she was always getting bigger than the venue. And so
Yeah, for
like
sure.
and that when you're kind of like understaffed can feel really stressful because there's kids like chasing you around. And I remember like especially like when we'd go to Australia, we'd play these like tiny rooms and like kids would like run out into traffic to like say hi to us, and it was just really scary.
Yeah.
And so I think the more time went on and it started to catch up, was like, okay, good, we're really playing a venue where everyone's like safe and
Mhm.
like doing okay here. and
Yeah.
and again, like you've been at these shows, like it's no fun to see your fans pass out at a show. Like
Yeah.
like you worry for them. And so the bigger the venue gets, like the less that happens, the more breathing room there is. But when there's like hundreds of kids like crushed against the barricade, like, kids pass out. And so it
Yeah.
can be really, I remember going to see the 1975 at the El Rey. It's really only standing room at the El Rey. And I remember like the first thing Maddie said to the audience was like, listen, like he was like, I'm seeing this, like everybody's gotta take several steps back. Like the kids up here are getting like completely crushed to death.
Yeah.
And it's like that.
Yeah, that gives me, like, PTSD, like, to think
Yeah.
about, like, the times where I've been, like, on a barricade and, like, getting
Yeah.
crushed, like,
Yeah.
I always think back to, like, I went to Gov Ball the same year that you guys
Hmm.
played.
Yeah.
Halsey played right before, um, Travis Scott. And so, like, Halsey ended, and I had been standing at that barricade for, like, 8 hours, and I hadn't
And
had
then
a
there's like Travis fans.
Yes, and then,
Yeah.
like, trying to get out, even though you're making room for them to, like, get closer up, they, like, didn't want to move, like, from where they were, so, like, I couldn't get out, and I remember at one point, like, my I was getting crushed so hard that, like, my feet weren't touching the ground, and I
Yeah.
was like, that part I don't miss, but, like, to some
Yeah.
extent,
That's pretty intense.
yeah, so I mean, even at Billy's shows, like, even though, like, some like, people listen to her and they're like, "Oh my god, like, her songs are, like, slower and
Yeah.
sad." Well, some of them, but, like, they're like, "How does that happen?" And I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
her fans are crazy." Like, in
Yeah.
the best way, but, like, they're crazy. Like, I've witnessed it firsthand. Like, it's hard when you get, like, such dedicated stans. It
Yeah.
gets to that point where, like, they're just like, "I will do anything to get barricade, and I will do anything to, like, get as close as possible." So and I can't say I can't relate because there have definitely
Sure. No, I
been times where
totally get it. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, when you're, in the spirit of the name of this podcast, it's like when you're on stage, your whole all of your energy is pointed at the crowd, really. I mean, maybe not every band, like there are bands that are kind of shoegazy that really just
Mhm.
seem like they're
Vibing.
like worrying about the music and
Yeah.
vibing. But like in our case, certainly in Billy's case, in I think pretty much every artist you've talked about, like
Mhm.
a Halsey or a Travis, a 1975, all the energy's pointed at the crowd.
Yeah.
And so you're a mirror for what's going on out there. So if there's like fights going on in the crowd, if something's happening, it's um you have to pay attention to it. And it's very scary to see something happen where you're like, oh my god, that's fucked up. And
Yeah.
Billy stopped the show a bunch of times because of stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, it's heavy to watch stuff like that happen.
You wanna hear the craziest thing I've ever seen in a crowd?
Yeah.
Like, so it was, like, 2016, and I was at a
Okay.
Halsey show, and, like, at that point, like, Halsey was, like, the fans were as rabid as anyone else's. Like she had like crazy fans, and I was one of them. Like I had a VIP ticket, I met her, and then like I was on the barricade, and I remember like during the show, this girl like 2 rows back like threw up, and like it was all packed in, so like people got it on them, and they were like, oh
Whoa.
my God, like this is disgusting, like whatever, like get her out of here. Like she was obviously sick, so they were trying to get her to like the front to get pulled out, and she got to the barricade and was like, I'm fine, like because like almost like she was like, she threw up like to get to the barricade. We were like, if you're fine, then move back. Like we were like, go ahead. Like, but like that was crazy too, because I remember her like she fully was like, oh, I'm fine now. Like once she got to the barricade,
Right.
and we were like, okay, then move back. Like because my like people had moved out of the way for her, and she was like, no, I'm not moving. And I'm like you need to get out. Like you threw up on people. Yeah, that was wild too. I've seen many people throw up at shows. That's never fun. And I have
No.
like a fear of throwing up. So like whenever I see
Mm.
it, like no.
Well, even I don't have a fear of throwing up, but anytime anyone throws up in like really close proximity to me, I'm pretty grossed out.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't. Yeah. One time I was on a flight to New Zealand, and a girl, a girl threw up getting on the plane. Like was like walking down the aisle like by me, and looked like pasty and like
yeah,
just like clear it was gonna throw up. And I was like sitting in my seat. This was like the first time we ever went to New Zealand, so we were in like coach baby, and yeah, she like vomited right next to me on the flight, and I remember just being like, oh my god, like in a tiny little airplane. It was horrible.
yeah. Oh, mm, none of that. None of that. But speaking of Halsey, we've been bringing her up. I
Yeah.
just my one of my questions was, what was it like producing a song for Manic? Because I love Halsey, so I just had to ask about her. You know that. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember you even commenting, like, I see your comments on her posts. I'm like, great.
Well, I've been very aware of Halsey for like a really long time, because she used to like there's like a collection of bands and people in LA that she was like I've known about her since 93, since like Room
Oh yeah,
93.
yeah, same.
And been a fan. And then I'm just going to be candid about this. The way that the Halsey thing happened is just through my friendship with Benny,
Mm,
who has executive produced her last couple albums.
yeah.
And I was at his house one day, and he played me this like thing, and was like, I think the chords are wrong. And so I just played like all different chords on it. And then it ended up, I was like not even aware at the time, but it ended up becoming a Halsey song.
Yeah.
So that, and this sort of happens more and more in terms of like something that you do evolves in a way that you didn't imagine it to. So yeah, I mean, worked on her album by never being in a room with her, and that's kind of like I'm all for that. I think that stuff's cool.
Yeah.
And I would still be thrilled to someday write a song with her, or produce a song fully that she'd made. But I'm a fan, and I think Manic's great. I thought there was great stuff on Hopeless Mountain Kingdom, and I thought Badlands was very inspired and cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was really cool. And I think it's also like in some ways playing a really small role on a really good album is kind of like, it's like a cameo. Like when you see a great movie and there's some actor you like, but they're only in like one shot.
Yeah.
You're like, they can't take credit for this movie, but what a cool honor to be
Yeah.
like in this cool film. And there's like a couple things like that for me, where like I didn't play a very big role in it, but I'm so honored to be involved. Like I love this artist Shaky Graves, and
Mm,
like co-wrote like some of a song with him. It's like so cool to just like have like little moments. Like there's I can't say right now, although it'll become very obvious in a week or two, but there's like an album coming out that's really great, and like I did like a little thing on it, and it's cool. Like it's
yeah.
cool to
Be part of
just have
it.
like
Yeah.
been around for some part of that album. um even though it's like I would never pretend to take credit for what's good about the album. I just got to be involved a little.
Yeah. Well, and okay, my like level of standing is gonna show here for a second, but I remember you sat next to her at an award show. And
The iHeart Awards, yeah.
yes, I think that's what it was. And like I just remember seeing you guys on TV, and like at the
Yeah.
time, like, you know, whenever I see you now, it's like
Yeah.
obviously like you're very successful, but when I see you, it's like, oh, it's like, you know,
Right,
that's
the
Phineas.
person you actually know.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And so like seeing you like sit next to her, I was like, whoa, like that's
Yeah.
crazy. Like
Right.
but I just love
She's wildly nice, and I am consistently impressed by her. Like, I remember we sat very close to them at the AMAs last year. You know what? Maybe we didn't even sit next to them or close to them. I think we sat next to Dua. Anyway, last at the AMAs, it was like one of those things where we were like, Billy and I were like walking off stage, and they were about to like take the stage, and we, just were like right here. And so we were like, oh, hi, whatever. And then I thought her performance was so cool. That performance with all the paint.
yes. Yeah.
I was so impressed. She's very creative. I thought that was impressive. And my only memory of saying anything to her at the iHeart. The funny thing about like all these award shows is like, even though you're sitting next to the person, you're actually in your seat next to them for like like a minute. Like the rest of the time they're like backstage getting ready, or you're
Yeah.
backstage getting ready. But I remember it was very soon after she'd been the host and the guest on SNL. And I remember being like, dude, like the East Side, like painting the painting upside down. I was like, that blew my mind. I thought that was very cool.
She's crazy good. I love
Yeah.
her. And then okay, my last question. Okay, wait, I have two, but this one's quick. Who was the most exciting person for you to meet as an artist, whether that was like
Yeah.
a collaborator or like an inspiration, that kind of thing?
I lost my shit when I met Lana Del Rey.
Yeah.
And we met Lana. I don't know why this is important, but we met Lana when we were like, it was way before now, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think now when we've met people, like, I don't know, that sounds sort of braggadocious. I don't mean it that way. It's just that now when we meet people, it's like, it's
They're
under
excited to
different
meet you.
circumstances.
Yeah, and they're
It's
excited to
different
meet you.
circumstances. And so we met Lana in like early 2018, and she was so nice. And it was her and Chuck, who I'm also a big fan of. I think Chuck's photography is very fire.
Yeah.
And they were so nice, and they smelled good. And yeah, they just made Billy and I feel like so like good. That was really cool. I've gotten to meet, like, this sounds, I don't know, like this is when I feel like a stan. Like, I've gotten to meet like so many of the people that I'm a huge fan of, and usually like pretty much just tell them, like, I just interact with them the way that I would if I ran into them in like a supermarket and I was only a fan. Like, I just go up to them and I'm like, I'm such a huge fan of your music. And it's such a, an honor. And even like, I have, of any person that I'm a fan of whose number I have in my phone, like 90% of the texts that I send them, and I don't like blow up their phone all the time, but it's usually like I'm listening to one of their songs on my own, and I'm like, God, I love this song. And I'm like, I have their number, and I just hit them up, and I'm like, this song's great, man. Like, that's pretty much like, it's very, like, I do that with John Mayer all the time, where I'm like, bro, like, this song is so good. And that's like I'm not looking for anything. I'm not trying to like be a star fucker about it. I think it's just that it's like, when someone makes art that's meaningful to you and you get to tell them, it feels good because it has so much meaning to you. And so it's like, sort of giving credit where credit's due. So Lana was a big deal to me. Yeah, Lana was a big deal.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I got the, like, any Lana fan knows, like, the selfie, like, when you're, like, in the front row and she comes down.
I thought didn't you kiss her on the cheek and say, may I kiss you on the cheek, and then kiss her on the cheek? I thought that was such a like incredible example of like consensual fan interaction.
Yeah.
Because like
'Cause
you know,
people do
as
it without asking.
well, and as Billie has talked about on her platforms, like, you know, she's been like groped by fans and the whole thing. And
Yeah,
it's like, it can be so violating.
yeah.
And yeah, the fact that in that video, you very quietly are like, may I kiss you on the cheek? She's like, yeah. I was like,
I
wow, like Jordan is like just crushing it. I was so pumped on that.
Oh my god, I appreciate that. But yeah, I remember people even messaging me like, "I love that you asked her." I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah, it
people
was
like
my
that."
favorite part of the video.
Wow, I appreciate that. But yeah, Lana's super sweet. And I'm like, I remember seeing the picture like of like you guys with her, and I was like, "Oh my god, like that's Lana." I
Oh,
think I
dude.
even like I messaged you. I was like, "That's insane." Like you met
Dude, I
Lana.
flipped out. Yeah, I was so excited.
Okay. Real last question. What was it like to win a Grammy? And by Grammy, I mean like every nominated
Yeah.
Grammy you've won.
So I'll go through the very short version of the night because
Mhm.
it changed over the course of the night. So we were nominated for. I was nominated for like, okay, this is where the numbers all get confusing. I have 6 little like Grammy awards.
Mhm.
I was nominated for 5. I don't know why I have 6 of them, but I do. So the ones that I was nominated for were best engineered album, producer of the year, and then song of the year, record of the year, and album of the year. And then Billie was nominated for pop vocal album and best new artist. Those are like the awards she was that I was not.
Yeah.
And so the way the Grammys works is like a couple of those awards are televised and most of them are not. And so the 3 that we were nominated for that were not televised were engineer, pop vocal album, and producer. And so I wasn't even in the room for engineer because we're like rehearsing for our performance later or something. And I had called our mastering engineer and our mixing engineer and said, like, if we win this, like, you guys go make the speech. Because I thought that would be nice for them. And also, like, they were mastering and mixing gets nominated for like record of the year and album of the year too. And like, they weren't going to talk if we
Yeah.
won that. So I was like, have your own thing. So I think all I thought at the beginning of the day was like, the only actually disappointing thing will be if we just lose everything. Like, I was like that would be sort of like a bummer if
Yeah.
we're like nominated for so many things we don't even get one. And so as soon as we got one, which was engineer, I was like, well, then like I'm done. Like, we have a Grammy. Like, that's one more Grammy than I ever thought we'd have in our
Yeah.
whole lives. So the pressure was kind of like immediately off. And then what happened next? Then I went in and like sat for the rest of the technical awards. And then when I won producer, I was just like, this is completely absurd. Because I really thought it was gonna be Jack that year.
Yeah.
I actually thought there was a lot of really deserving people. I thought Ricky was very deserving too, who did Truth Hurts and a bunch of other stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so that was a huge honor. Um, and I just was like in shock after that. And then the actual awards. Oh, and Billie had won pop vocal. So we like, by the time the actual award show had started, like, we'd already,
Yeah.
between the two of us, we'd won 3. And so I was like, this is like, I'm perfectly happy to just sit here and clap for Lizzo and Lil Nas X or whoever wins everything. And then kind of as the next what was like 4 awards like went on, like, it became like more and more embarrassing because it was like the funny thing about winning an award, and specifically a Grammy, is like, I've said this a bunch, but like, being nominated is really an honor and really cool.
Yeah.
And then winning is very weird because you're beating, like, in our case, we were like beating out like Ariana and Lana and Lizzo and Vampire Weekend and Bonnie Vare, like artists that are like legendary,
Yeah.
important artists to me. And so you're like winning this award over them, and in your head you're like, well, I didn't make anything better than these artists. Like, these are great albums.
Yeah.
So it's bizarre. I mean, we feel very grateful, but like, we at this moment we're nominated for like another 3 or 4 this year, I think.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
congratulations, by the way.
thank you. They're like, God, I really hope Meg the Stallion wins song and record.
That
I
would be
just
amazing. I just wanna
I
hear
would
your
be,
speech.
huh?
I want to hear her speech.
Thank you very much. I Yeah, I'm just a huge Meg the Stallion stan, so I really want her to win. I think Future Nostalgia should win album. I think Meg should win
I
song
love
and record.
Yeah,
I think she should probably win best new artist too. I think she should probably win all
Meg
of
Thee
those.
Stallion. Yeah, the
Yeah.
only other person I'm like best new artist is Phoebe because like Punisher is like my favorite album of the year. So I'm like,
I think Phoebe's very deserving. I just
I think
think
she'll win. I think she might win. Was it best
I
alternative?
hope she wins like alternative album or
Yeah,
like rock song or
yeah,
something. I just think Meg has had like the inarguably the
yes,
biggest impact this year. And I think just with the climate this year and what she did on SNL and yada yada yada, I think she's very important.
yes.
So anyway, that's my Grammy hopes for this year.
Well, that actually brings us to well, if you have any questions for me,
Uh-huh.
feel free to ask. You don't have to. You do not have to, but if you do. Um and then we'll just talk about like our
Yeah.
favorites 2020. So if you don't
Yeah.
have any, we can just go into that. But
Favorite what out like music?
yes, just like
Okay.
I have a current favorite section where we kind of plug like
Yeah.
our favorite like song or
I
album.
love I love I love Dominic's album from this year a
Mhm.
lot. Love that Strokes album a ton. Like huge fan of that album. I love Punisher. Um, I cannot stop listening to Body Yaddy 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 Yaddy.
Yep.
I love that song. Um, it's so good. And then yeah, I mean those are the ones that jump to mind. But I listen to music all the time, so
Yeah.
there's more than that.
I think, yeah, my favorite albums this year. I mean, like, next week is like the last episode of like my podcast season, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about it then because I don't have a guest, so I have
Uh-huh.
more things to talk about. But
Yeah, you don't have to say it now then.
well, I mean, like my favorite. I've been listening to this isn't new, but like Kendrick Lamar's "Damn," I've been listening to all week. That I just talk about.
Unbelievable album.
Yes, and I just remembered it existed, and I've been listening to it on and on, like on and on. And then favorite artists, I did a project on Max Martin this past week, so I've just been listening to
Smart
like
guy.
every song he's ever produced or written, and because he's a genius.
Yeah.
Um, my favorite song, I think, like from that playlist that I have is like "Alone" by Avril Lavigne, which is a great song. And also, like, I wanted to tell you, okay, so I bring her up in every episode, but like
Yeah.
my favorite discovery of this year has been Baby Queen, who is this like alt pop girl from the UK, and her music is amazing. And it's like the first time I've been like this excited about an artist in like a long time, and I think that she's gonna be like really big. So I wanted to tell you about
Baby
her.
Queen.
Yes.
I'm looking her up.
Yes, because we always share like new music, but she's great. And then like obviously Punisher is one of my favorites. I also love the Glass Animals album, Dreamland, that came out this year.
They're
Um,
so good.
yeah, that album's great. So that's pretty much it. Um, but yeah, so that's pretty much the episode. We
Well,
can,
thanks for having me on. I
of
appreciate
course.
it.
Yeah, you should all stream Phineas's music. He has songs "Where the Poison Is," "What They'll Say About Us." By the way, "What They'll Say About Us" might be my new favorite of yours.
Oh,
Like,
thank you. I
yeah, I
appreciate
mean,
it.
like Hollywood Forever was a longtime favorite. It's
Mm,
still up there, but I love
well,
that
thank you. I really
song.
appreciate it.
And of course, the Blood Harmony EP. And he's at Phineas on everything. I'm sure you all know him already, but that is what it is. And with that being said, this episode can be listened to on Spotify and iTunes. You can watch it on YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram, both sides of the barricade, on Twitter, BSOTB Pod, the acronym, and then pod. My Instagram and Twitter are JTaylorLDR. Follow, subscribe, like, download, rate, comment, all of that. Thank you, Phineas, for being on.
Love you, Jordan.
Yes, love you too. And thank you so much for listening.
Of course.
Goodbye.